you buy from him at a premium will not be heated above 110 degrees, and that's the way he gets around not oxidizing and causing an inflammatory response from olive oil. All these things are way too expensive to fry with. If you want to use it to take a teaspoon once in a while, it's probably not a problem. Fried foods in general, refined flour. I don't know why they picked pizza to do that, but anyway. By the way, you can make healthy pizza. There's nothing wrong with whole wheat bread. There's nothing wrong with tomato sauce on top. And believe it or not, I even put beans on mine. See, now you know you don't want to come to my house. But by the time you taste it with your eyes closed, you'd go, not too bad. Dairy products in general, dairy is made for baby cows. They need the calcium. They need the protein. They usually go for what? Any dairy farmers here? 3, 4 months, maybe 5 months at the most, that cow until it's weaned. Artificial sweeteners are highly inflammatory, including neurological inflammation. I would rather you, don't quote me on this, but I'd rather you have the white sugar. It is less harmful for you than the artificial sweeteners. Well, there's your Fruit Loops. Toucan bird. By the way, it's an incredible experience to be in Costa Rica. And if you go into one of those aviaries, those big old toucans come down. And that whole beak you see, that is totally a facade to impress the ladies. That is almost hollow, and he couldn't peck a seat apart if he had to with that big old beak. You can almost tap on it, sound like a hollow box. So now you learn something about birds. By the way, not the only reason, one of the major reasons I go to Costa Rica is because I get my teeth done for about 1/4 the price that you pay up here. So when you get my age and you need to have a few molars changed around. Saturated fats in general. In general, saturated fats are from 2 sources, vegetable, palm, and coconut, and all the other saturated fats are all in the animal area. Conventional grain-fed meats. By the way, we're still on the avoid list. This isn't the recommended list, okay? Processed meats. If you're going to do anything, if you are going to eat meat, don't eat it this way. Gluten from store-bought bread. I'm not anti-gluten unless you've got a gluten intolerance, but that's not the point here. What I'm trying to get at is from store-bought bread. Make your own bread or buy it healthfully. An alcohol intake from an inflammatory response, highly recommend that you leave that at the ABC store. Had to throw this one in. I don't know why they came up with the name Blizzard. I've never engaged in one of these, so I don't even know if they're good or bad. People tell me they're wonderful, but I'll have to take your word for it because, and of course, fast foods. Now, what's the why behind this? Some of you that appreciate some chemistry, we're going to take just a few minutes. First of all, arachidonic acid in the cell membrane can actually turn to what we call a free amino acid, and they have different pathways that can cause different amounts of inflammation. And so when we deal with the phospholipidase pathway, what do we use to try to inhibit that problem? Prednisone, to try to knock that one out. If we're dealing with the cyclooxygenase pathway, we use those inhibitors, whether it be aspirin or NSAIDs or COAX or COX-2 inhibitors, whether it be Celebrex, Viax, and Mobic. Names you're probably very familiar with. The unique thing is, if you stop the inhibitors in one pathway, have you changed the cell wall? No. You have just diminished your response to the inflammation. You haven't solved the problem. Colchicine. Any pathway you use, whether it's dealing with Crohn's disease or their bowel inflammation, this is what we do. Leukotriene inhibitors, Xylaflow, single air. See, when you start seeing this, you go, wait a minute. Asthma is nothing more than an inflamed airway. Maybe it's something I'm eating. I'll give you a tip for your grandkids. Take them off all dairy, and you may have a lot less doctor visits. Polyunsaturated fats, omega-6. You look at what it makes, down here the omega-3s, but arachidonic acid, the one that's in meat products and also you can get from here, is highly inflammatory. The omega-3s, the linolenic, from legumes, leafy green vegetables, flax, canola oils, etc., etc. And yes, you have the EPA, that's from fish. That's pretty much, EPA is almost, totally from fish, and so is the DHA. But remember, these two are omega-3 fats. But the problem with these two is you've got to buy the whole package. You've got to buy the high protein. You've got to buy the inflammation. You've got to buy the mercury. And so you're buying a whole package here. This is the safest package to buy, the alpha linolenic acid. Avoid or reduce trans fats, omega-6s, margarine. I think we've gone through this. The difference between a cis and a trans fat, this is polyunsaturated, partially hydrogenated. When you read your labels, you read partially hydrogenated, you have to think trans fats. Now they're getting fancy for us. They're saying no trans fats because they want you to buy their product. Omega-6 or omega-3 have to do with position of the double bond. Omega-3 has one here, 1, 2, 3 carbons, that's an omega-3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, that's an omega-6. So a lot of these language we throw around is chemical language, but it's actually in the structure of the fat. If you want to get rid of trans fats, it's relatively easy. 40% of trans fats comes from cakes, cookies, crackers, pies, and bread. 21% animal products, 17% margarine, and fried foods. By the time you get down to the rest, you almost don't have to worry about it. How much omega fat do you need? Strive for an omega-6 to 3 ratio of a 4 to 1. Well, I'd rather see it the other way around. The average American is 16 to 1, 16 times the omega-6s. You never have to try to buy a supplement with omega-6 in. That is totally ridiculous. I see people buying omega-6 supplements. I'm going, folks, omega-6s are in everything. Try to get rid of it. Don't spend your money on an omega-6. You get that in everything anyway. Please only spend your money if you're going to spend it on omega-3s. You don't. For maintenance, 2.5 grams per day. This is omega-3 fats. Improved health, 5. To treat chronic pain, 7.5. And to treat neurological disease, greater than 10. If I'm trying to treat a person with Alzheimer's, if I'm trying to treat an MS patient, if I'm trying to treat a person with peripheral neuropathy, please give them the anti-inflammatory agent, omega-3 fats. Where they come from? Well, you know this already. We're back to flax, we're back to chia seed, we're back to almonds, we're back to walnuts, and those are the biggies. Every other vegetable is going to have in just larger quantities. Anti-inflammatory diet, lose weight. Wait a minute, what's that got to do with diet? Adipokines are an inflammatory chemical that your and my fat tissue put off. If you wonder why weight correlates with cancer and weight correlates with heart disease, it's not just because of the weight. It's the fat cell puts off chemicals that cause inflammation in your body. When you lose weight, you have less inflammation. So when your knees start feeling better, you go, well, that makes sense because I weigh 10 pounds less. Well, it does make sense, but is it due to losing 10 pounds of inflammation or is it due to taking the weight off? I'll tell you, it's both. Have some protein with each meal, primarily fruits and vegetables. You go, wait a minute. How can he write that? How much protein is in fruit? Not a lot, but all we need. And like we already talked, I already blew my line here because broccoli is one of your highest in vegetables. And then green leafy vegetables, nuts, flaxseed, or oil. Anti-inflammatory lifestyle. I think this is one that's interesting. Obviously, exercise, not smoking, weight loss, stress management. Vagal nerve stimulation via abdominal breath work. Those of you that exercise, you don't have to worry about doing this. You get it automatically. There is something valuable going out on your front porch, especially if you've got a nice view, early in the morning, and taking 10 to 20 deep breaths and just pack those lungs as full as you can get them, and exhale and try to push everything out you can. You're going to get a vagal response that actually decreases your inflammation, including your airways. I wasn't kidding about all those natural doctors I showed you at the end of the last lecture. You saw one was Dr. Air. Well, we all know we need oxygen. But how do you get good oxygen into your tissue? Treatment of depression. Is it possible that depression is due to your diet? You are what you eat. I don't have any doubt about it. And social support, I don't know. Food can give you the wrong kind of social support. You know why I think people overeat? Because the donut never jumped off the plate and smacked them on the mouth and said, "Don't eat me." You have 100% control. You don't have to worry about it talking back. And as long as you can afford it, you get it. And eating is a very strong psychological drive, and I'm glad for that. Otherwise, many of us would say, "I'll just skip for a week." So you've got an innate drive put in your body by your Creator, and we have messed it up. Now, how many of you have without appetite? No appetite for 3 to 5 days. When you're really sick and you don't give a rip, and you go, I mean, they could put your favorite dish in front of you and say, "I'll pass." Take that and say, "Okay, I've got a God-given appetite, and now I'm very thankful for it." Because I have been there when you had no appetite, and I could die real easy. And so when I deal with people who are in the last stages, you totally understand. They truly don't have an appetite. They really could care less. Food is not, it actually means nothing to them. But in the in-between, we need to actually deal with and control the appetite and not use our food as our... Now they even have a whole category of foods. What do they call it? Come on, you've told me. Comfort foods. Well, how can a food give you comfort? It's not a blanket. You know, it's not your boyfriend or girlfriend. You see what we've done? We've given a physical entity great power over us. And that's the difference. See, I want you to enjoy your food the best you possibly can. I really enjoy when I eat. I like to taste it. I enjoy the flavor. But I don't want that food to be in charge of me. Same slide. I didn't get mixed up. Hang in there with me. You're going to see something utterly amazing. Took out the prednisone, and what did we put in? Onions, turmeric, and feverfew. How about some suggestions? We'll get the whole slide here, and you'll get to see all of them. Oh, you can take as many pictures as you like. I was going to let you know there's more coming. Can you believe that? There are natural things in your diet to help you deal with pain and inflammation already built in if you're willing to eat them. Remember the phospholipidase, A2? What did I have written here on my last slide? Steroids. How about the cyclooxygenase pathway? How do we deal with that? Onions and apples got quercetin. Turmeric, gets its name up there a couple times. Curcumin. Curcumin longa is the name, that's the genus species for turmeric. And when someone says, I take curcumin, they mean they're giving me the Latin. Now, if you're taking a curcuminoid, that means they've made an extract of the curcumin. That's an extract. That's obviously taking something out. Rosemary, red pepper, as in cayenne pepper, and ginger. Onions and apples for the lipooxygenase pathway. Boswellia, another herb, anti-inflammatory herb, and rosemary. Let's go back in case you want to take a picture of the whole thing. It is too simple, folks. Your diet is the best thing you can do to cut inflammation. And when you cut inflammation, you lose weight, you decrease your risk of heart disease, you decrease your risk of cancer, your bowels love you a lot more, and your brain starts to come alive, and you go, wow. You see, I'm willing to sacrifice most anything in my life for this up here. When this doesn't work well, I'm not having a good day. I'm used to being extremely efficient. My only hope, I tell people, if I had to go back through medical training right now, it's because I've got 40 years experience behind me, because my memory is not what it was when I was 23. But one of my professors used to show us up on a regular basis. This man, I don't know if he realized how smart he was in his younger days, because he was a lumberjack, and the size of this man was the kind of man that, you know, you think that this is the guy that can, and by the way, he didn't do it with a chainsaw. I mean, this guy was like 80-some years old when we were there. He's the kind of guy who could almost bury an axe in a tree, one of those kind of men. And you went, wow, good old Dr. Mortensen. He would come to class with no notes, no book, nothing. He would give us all handouts, you know, 15, 20-page handout. He'd sit up front, not sit up, he would stand up front and he would lecture. And they would turn around and go to the blackboard and put a line there. That means that's where it should be on your handout. Didn't write a word. They put a line down here, that's important. I mean, he had to tell us, we're 1/4 his age, and he had to tell us what's important so we would get tested. The man had a photographic memory. It was absolutely incredible to see that mind work in his 80s. One of the medical students piped up and said, because he was asking the doctor for evidence. And so, you know, I guess we think we're pretty smart. And so he asked, and Dr. Mortensen's response was, well, on page 352, the top paragraph, you'll find your answer. But before he even told him where to find the answer, he says, and which biochemistry book are you studying? You see, when you're in medical school, there might be 4 books you can study from. You choose how you want to get the information. But he said, you know, I'm studying from Lineager or something. And he says, you'll find it on this page in this paragraph. When you got someone 4 times your age that's just totally outranking you, you go, hey, keep your marbles. Simple. Look at this. Onions, apples, turmeric, rosemary, red pepper, cayenne, apples. So maybe that's true. Apple a day. Onions, turmeric, feverfew, apples and onions again, the quercetin, boswellia. Mediterranean diet, we talked about that a little bit, is definitely helpful. Over the American diet, you get a reduction of death from coronary artery disease by 0.67. That means a 1/3 decrease compared to the American Heart Association diet. So, step in the right direction. Intake of omega-3 fats, stabilization of atherosclerotic plaques. Well, first of all, I don't want you having plaques, but if you have plaques, I don't want them to rupture and cause a clot, and we not see you here next year. Reduction of inflammation by mediation, prostaglandin synthesis pathway. Prostaglandins can both be inhibitory or they can be the opposite. Aspirin is a prostaglandin inhibitor. But aspirin works completely different. Aspirin stops the communication of the pain. It doesn't change the problem. It's like well, we've got cell phones now. It's like pulling the wires out of the wall for your phone and say, man, I can't figure out why I haven't got any calls in the last 2 weeks. That's what you do to your brain when you take an aspirin. That toe that you drop the weight on is still painful, is still swelling, is still red, is still being infiltrated with inflammatory chemicals, but your brain goes, I feel pretty good. Improved ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 reduces arachidonic acid, that's one of your main inflammatories, and pro-inflammatory, pro-platelet aggregates, cytokines. Why do we have more clots? We're eating the wrong food. Enhances prostaglandin E1 and E3, less inflammation. Leukotrins, leuko meaning white, trins mean that's a chemical that comes from your white blood cells, which is part of your immune response. Glycemic index, some of you are familiar with that term. We use it with foods to try to determine how much they affect your blood sugar level. So obviously white sugar would be at the top and beans would probably be at the bottom. We also have a more accurate number of glycemic load, because how many of you eat one single thing for the whole meal and that's it? See, the glycemic index is really artificial. Glycemic load looks at it as a whole meal. So when you eat your white potato with your beans, with your broccoli, with your cauliflower, and your serving of peas, and you eat the whole meal, the white potato doesn't throw your glycemic index totally off the map, because now you're looking at glycemic load. High glycemic load foods increase inflammation, increase the risk of heart disease and diabetes. Examples obviously are white bread, potatoes, pastries, sweets, etc. So, what does insulin do in your bloodstream? First of all, let's admit we have to have insulin. What does high insulin load do inside your vessel? Now you know why diabetics have more heart disease and more cancer. Insulin is a very powerful chemical. It is a highly inflammatory chemical. Use it sparingly. And the way you use your insulin sparingly is you eat the way I'm talking about. Lower whole grains, fruit, vegetables, legumes, or mixing high foods with those that are low. So I'm saying you can get away with your white potato if you put garbanzos or kidney beans or top it with that and leave the earth balance to somebody else. Food is beautiful. We've got example here. And I am so thankful. I think that's my last slide. No, we're not done yet. I am so thankful that you don't go out to a tree and pick 8 brown pills off the tree and that's your menu for the day. Aren't you glad you've got choice? And so many choices. Please use your choices appropriately. Superfoods that decrease inflammation. Do you have handouts in front of you? I'm going to save you some writing. Keep going. Make sure we got what I'm talking about here. You should have some there you go. That should save some. Superfoods that decrease inflammation. I told you I was going to end with what you can eat. Before, when I go through my list of what you stay away from, you go, how'd that guy know what I eat? Beans, whether they're navy beans, whether they're pinto beans, whether they're sugar snap peas, whether they're green peas, please enjoy them. Blueberries and other purple grapes, cranberries, boysenberries, raspberries, strawberries, currants, please enjoy them. Broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale, turnips, cauliflower, collards, bok choy, mustard greens. There's one thing I've learned about the South since I've lived here. People like greens around this place. Now, where I live, they call it killing the greens. Now, I wish they wouldn't do that. So they fry their bacon, and then they take the bacon grease and they pour it on the greens, and they call that killing the greens. Now remember, you're talking to a vegetarian kid that got teased in his younger years, okay? The point was, to me, that would be totally grody. If I grew up that way, that would probably make those just taste right. And if my greens didn't have bacon grease on them, it probably wouldn't be worth eating. But there's nothing wrong with those healthy greens. Just keep them healthy, okay? By the way, the bacon grease can lay aside. Oats, wheat germ, ground flax, brown rice. You can read this as well as I can. Oranges, lemons, grapefruit, pumpkin. See, we're going with colors here, aren't we? Green, orange, blue, dark blue, those. If your plate looks good, it's got a good chance of being healthy as far as colors. Somebody had fun with their heart. More superfoods. You should have this one too somewhere in that handout. I got to get tofu in. Soy milk, soy nuts. There's no such thing as a soy nut. I don't know why they call them that. They just happen to dry and bake their soybean. That is a soybean. But the reason you can eat it, because you can't eat dry soybeans. Please, you'll be going to Costa Rica for dental work. Soy nuts, whatever they've done, they've baked that soy nut and they've changed the structure so it is now chewable. You don't go try to do this with regular soybeans. Okay, where are we at? Edamame, tempeh. Okay, spinach, we're in a dark green, kale, Swiss chard, etc., etc. Tomatoes, obviously things that are red from persimmons, etc., papaya, and of course your walnuts, your almonds, pistachios, etc. Have I given you enough choices to eat? Think you can manage the next week? Not going to starve you too bad? Walnuts, we went through this already. Obviously, other nuts that are excellent. If you can afford macadamia nuts. By the way, macadamia nuts are so high in fat, I think you'd mess them up if you deep fried them. They are naturally one of the highest fat. Therefore, you get them on Christmas, and that's it. Japanese Okinawa longevity diet are some of the longest lived people. This is one of the, what they call the blue zones on the planet. I want to go through why we get so many people that are over 100 years old in this study. And I wish I could, well, I'll have to read it. Okay, the first group, 70% of their diet is from sweet potatoes. Sounds boring. I happen to like sweet potatoes. Every day, I probably would eat less, which a lot of us need to. 12% rice, 7% grains and wheat, 6% soy and legumes, and you thought those Japanese ate too much soy. No, they eat sweet potatoes. And you come on down to, well, I'm having a hard time even reading this, but I'm getting on down, so I'm going to show you a few things. All the way to here, 1% of their diet is fish. People use the excuse that they eat fish and seaweed. 1% is dairy, 1% is eggs, and they even have a little bit of pork. How they live to 100 eating pork? Well, it's 1%, by the way. And so they have, and even 1% here is alcohol. By the way, I'm not recommending the lower end. I'm just telling you what these people eat. They're in the blue zone. They do live, many of them, to centenarians. They're over 100 years old. But I want to finish that slide. But it says, what do the longest living people on earth eat? As we discussed, the Okinawa diet and living to 100, the traditional diet in Okinawa is based on vegetables, obviously. Sweet potatoes, beans, and other plants. There is a modern misconception that their traditional diet included a substantial contribution from fish or other meat. It didn't. 1% fish. They are not. You always think of Japanese as fish and seaweed. Yeah. Well, 1% fish, 70% sweet potato. We like to hear this 70% fish. That won't give you, and it went on. The U.S. military ran Okinawa until it was given back to Japan in 1972. As we have actual data on what the Okinawans have eaten from the U.S. National Archives. So they've got good information. And it goes on, what I've already said, 1% of their diet is fish, 1% of the diet is other meats, 96% of their diet is plant-based, and it goes on. Page 2. You want to hear the most healthiest people? Some of this protection may be due to what they're eating. It talks about eating 18, this is a different group of people now. I'm going to share it with you as we get there. 1,800 calories a day. They are actually eating a greater mass of food, but whole plant foods are calorically dilute. Calorically dilute. How much cabbage, how many calories are in a cup of cabbage? 40. How many in a cup of broccoli? Same amount, 30, 40. So when we say calorically dilute, we mean we get a lot of food for very few calories. It's not uncommon for a person to walk in the office and say, I can't believe you're feeding me this much, and I'm losing weight. The plant-based nature of the diet may trump the caloric restriction, though, because the one population that lives longer than the Okinawa Japanese doesn't just eat a 98% free diet, they eat a 100% free diet, meat-free diet. You want to hear who it is? The Adventist vegetarians in California have perhaps the highest life expectancy of any formally described population. Okinawans, congratulations. But the fish and what they were eating didn't help their longevity. If you want to be some of the longest longevity, that's it. But you know what? As important as that is, I wish that I had a study that would tell you about your mental health. If you're 100 and don't know who you are, what's the value of being 100? We're seeing a correlation, though. The correlation we see is that those that are on the anti-inflammatory diet have less Alzheimer's disease. They keep their marbles. I happened to be going to school at one of those blue zones, and I was ready to leave because the smog was so bad that when we came there, my wife said, surely you can go to school somewhere else. So we moved higher up on the mountain, and we lived most of the time above the smog. But that's the closest I've ever come to knowing what emphysema feels like. When you hike in the mountains during the summer, when the smog is up, you just start aching. I mean, it gets painful to breathe. Of course, the joke was, if you can't see it, don't breathe it. That's how bad the smog is. Well, it's cleaning up, and it had nothing to do with our cars. It had nothing to do with that. It's a geographic location, and all of LA's pollution gets pushed out to us. And until we get a good Santa Ana wind from the desert and give it back, we don't look too good. You don't know there's a mountain. San Gorgonio is not there at 10,000 plus feet until about November. And then you see a snow-capped mountain. You go, where have you been all summer? So it's amazing that a blue zone can be in a place with polluted air. I don't want to have you have polluted air, but somehow they've overcome even their pollution by what they're eating. So, please take care of your minds. Please take care of your hearts. Please ask the question, how do I get rid of inflammation? And when you deal with that question, you will deal with a whole host of diseases. Everything from muscle cramps. What do you think muscle cramps are? What do you think muscle spasms are? You start going through the whole list. You know what doctors do? Either directly or indirectly, they treat inflammation. I showed you how to do it with herbs and foods like apples and onions and boswellia and turmeric, or you can try the other. No, you don't. I don't recommend you try the other route. Anyway, we've got time for questions. We can turn on lights. I can hear you fairly well. Yes, ma'am.
Would you care to shine light on which soy products or we should avoid or not avoid?
The question is about soy products. Two things. The more whole soybeans you eat, I don't have to worry about you. The whole food. You can't go wrong there. When it comes down to soy products in general, soy milk seems to still be okay. Tofu is a refined soy product. If you've ever made tofu, You keep the protein part of it, you keep the fat part of it, and the part you throw away in the tofu process is basically the carbohydrate fiber portion of it. My wife used to make her own tofu. But the point is, it is refined, but you haven't changed the protein structure yet, and that's important. So a lot of the phony bologna and stuff you see in the stores, and they start to have a nerve to call it a smart dog, is actually, read the ingredients. If it says soy protein isolate, that is actually more problem from an IGF, insulin-like growth factor standpoint, than dairy products in stimulating cancer growth. This is how soy got a black eye. But they weren't being truthful with you. They write at the top of the article, soybeans increase your risk of breast cancer. That is bogus. Soybeans don't. Isolated soy protein that you extracted and made in your laboratories to feed people does. And the other word to watch out for is soy protein concentrate, soy protein isolate, and soy protein concentrate. If you stay away from those, you're going to get the benefits that the Japanese ladies have been getting for the past 100 years. And believe me, if soy was a problem, my brother, my older brother, was raised pretty much on cow's milk. For some reason, when I came along, they called me the soybean baby because we were drinking a lot of soy milk at that. Yeah, soy milk's been around quite a while. And then my younger brother, we had goats and cows and stuff on a small. We were always vegetarian. We were lacto-ovo. We grew our own chickens and et cetera. We were on a small farm. Guess who had their tonsils taken out? My older brother and my younger brother. I felt I got ripped off because when they came home, they got to eat ice cream. I still have my tonsils. The reason I'm telling you all this is soy is a good food. There is nothing wrong with it. We have messed it up in our look-alike, smell-alike, taste-alike. Whether you're trying to make a thing that looks like bacon, or if you're trying to make it look like a piece of chicken. No, don't eat that phony stuff, okay? It is not healthy. We've got a microphone. Did I do justice to your question?
I was listening to a doctor that you probably know about, Dr. Greger, How Not to Die. And he said that red cabbage is 8 times more nutritious than green.
I'm sorry, I was going to get the article. The one I read you was by Dr. Gregory, but I mean, go ahead.
Oh, he said that red cabbage is 8 times more nutritious than even the green. So we've been eating red cabbage.
Good choice, and the reason for that, he's comparing probably one component, and that is the antioxidant level.
Right.
And by the way, that's a good example of what research does. Make sure you know why he says it's 8 times more efficient. Or it's not because it's got 8 times more calories or 8 times less fat. It's because it's more likely colors equal antioxidant potential a lot of times. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that a lack of vitamin D, you talked about that. So I'm vitamin D deficient. Are you talking about vitamin D3, vitamin D2, and
Okay.
how do you raise your levels of vitamin D?
Vitamin D, most vitamin D in its active form is going to be vitamin D3. When you take enough of it and the body can convert it, then you can convert from D2 to D3. So, here's the way it works for a vegetarian. I can relatively easily get vitamin D2 from a vegetable source. It is much harder to get D3 from a vegetable source. So I have to give a higher dose of D2 that the body converts into D3 to get your blood level up. Now, if you go with the medical route, they will give you 50,000 units of D2, and at that quantity, it will come up. Most of it will be wasted, it'll go down the drain, but it will come up. Your vitamins A, D, E, and K are what we call your fat-soluble vitamins. So you can actually build up a level of vitamin D and store it for a while. So we're supposed to store it during the summer to take care of us through the winter. Because we're checking so many vitamin D levels, now we're finding that some people, even with good sunshine and et cetera, are not doing well. They don't seem to be absorbing it. So then we go to the, not synthetic, we go to the supplement to concentrate it. You may have to take a supplement to accomplish that goal. But the high vitamin D levels, those people, even if their inflammatory markers were higher, they had less disease. So we realize that vitamin D is one of the factors that suppresses or decreases your inflammation in your body, and that's what you should be concerned about. When I went through school, it was about rickets. If your legs aren't bowed, you're in good shape. But we've gone from that to looking at what vitamin D was the immune system, which involves the inflammatory situation. That's what we're dealing with now.
Is that related to osteoarthritis?
Osteoarthritis is going to be an inflammatory response at the joint articulating surfaces, knee, wherever it's at. Changing and getting rid of the arachidonic acid in your fats can do more for your osteoarthritis than about anything else I can tell you. We have good evidence. We have health resorts that people go to for the sake of their coronary arteries. And in a 21-day program above Sacramento, California, there's a place called Weimar Institute. People come in there, and they come in there because they're short of breath or they're sick of chest pain. And they come in there and they can hardly walk. After 21 days in the program, these people are out there walking 8 miles. Well, you don't do that with inflamed knees. So we're seeing all these side benefits from trying to take care of our coronary artery. We see side benefits in all these joints. Yeah, we should. Our joints do not need to wear out before we do. If you're wearing your joints out, it's either because we're overusing them or we're causing something to inflame them, including playing sports like me. Yes,
Hi.
ma'am.
What do you do with beans and cabbage to reduce the gashy property of it?
I'm sorry, I'm missing your question.
What do you do with beans
Beans?
and cabbage, which has a gassy property on it, and when you
Well-
eat, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. Can't be a vegetarian without dealing with that. The gas property of beans comes from the odd chain carbohydrates that are not properly digested further up. And when they get into the large intestine, the bacteria ferment that, obviously cause excessive amounts of gas. Minimal amounts of gas in the intestinal tract are absorbed into the bloodstream, and you just, you breathe them off like any other gas that comes in. When you exceed the capacity, then you obviously have flatulence. There's no such thing as a flatulent-free bean. I've heard all the recipes. They bake them, they fry them, they freeze them, they pour off the water. I don't care. Maybe I'm exceptional, but I don't think so. If you eat enough beans, I think you're going to have that. So you need to get an outside job or, But here's the problem. There's nothing wrong with flatulence. We have made it a curse. You can say, you don't know. Well, I do know. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a physiological problem. Because you have flatulence doesn't automatically mean you've got something wrong with your intestinal tract. What it means if you've exceeded the capacity. So here's a tip. Eat more rice and less beans. Eat things that tend to absorb the gas and eat less in that area. If beans cause severe cramping, either in the bowel or in the stomach, some people can't eat beans. Some people can't tolerate. So you have to learn your body well enough. Most of us can handle beans fairly well. So I'm not feeling that I'm really helping you a lot. I'm just hopefully explaining that you're not abnormal.
It's the same thing with cabbage, though.
What's that?
Cabbage.
Cabbage, any of the cruciferous family has the same type of chemistry of the food. The more fuel you give your good bacteria in the bowel, the more gas they're going to produce. Vegetarians have more gas because they eat more fiber. Vegetarians live longer. Maybe no one can stand us. I don't know. Yes, ma'am.
What do you do about depression? I find that coffee helps it.
Coffee helps depression. And I haven't even mentioned that today, did I? If coffee helps depression, it has to do with how it improves your brain function, unfortunately, temporarily. In the long run, it won't help you, though.
So what do you do? What do you
See, if it helped you, you'd take it once and be done with it, right? You'd be over your depression. Doesn't that make sense? If it's a treatment, then do it and you're good. Well, it doesn't work that way, does it? In fact, I will guarantee you that if it helps, it will also let you down where you feel like you want more.
Right.
Depression is multifactorial. reducing the inflammation is just one of the factors. We can talk about hormones, we can talk about blood flow, we can talk about brain function, we can talk about feeding your brain. But if you're interested in feeding the brain the right chemistry, your plant-based diet has the best thing you can do. So you're still better off, but you got me curious. I don't have a study, but I do know that the omega-3 fats, whether it be in flax or chia and all that, there's this thing called brain bars. And you watch, this is Dr. Nedley, Depression the Way Out. His recipe includes what? You read the book and you go, that's incredible. He wants you to sleep, he wants you to breathe your fresh air. He chooses the almost totally lifestyle approach, and part of that approach is what you eat. And what you eat is what your brain has to work with. Now, if you just got your arm cut off and you can't use it anymore, there is situational depression that I think is going to be totally normal too. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, I think we're getting close to 12, maybe even more percentage of people in the United States on over age 25 on antidepressants. Well, how can they help? You know what an antidepressant drug is. Okay. Antidepressant drug is kind of like aspirin in headaches. An antidepressant drug changes your brain function to where you don't give a rip. Ask around, saying, are you less depressed? And they'll say, no, but I don't cry anymore. Well, I'm for that. But the point is, antidepressant drugs basically stimulate the part of the mind that make you, who cares?
Who cares?
So you turn into a zombie, but it's better than crying. I mean, the lady in my office did it best. She goes, my husband and I were watching a movie the other night. He's sitting there crying, and it's not even fazing me, and I'm the crybaby in the family. She goes, I am dead. I'm emotionally dead. I'm going, ma'am, there is a better way. There's things that you can do to deal and cope with this. See, I think we're far too liberal with passing out antidepressants, in my opinion. Diet is just one of the answers.
But do you think coffee does that? Does that to your brain?
Coffee is a depressing chemical. It's a biphasic chemical. First you get stimulation, and you know all about that, and that's, if it depressed you in the beginning, you wouldn't drink it. But it causes stimulation initially, and then it causes the opposite effect. So the take-home message, you got to go cold turkey. Every time you're tempted with your coffee, you drink a cup of water and run a mile. No. Yes, ma'am.
Let's see. Can you cure, now if you have inflammation already throughout the body, can the change in diet cure it? Can it get rid of the inflammation?
No, you're totally hopeless. This lecture wasn't worth anything.
Okay.
Might as well go home and get depressed.
Okay, so in
Of
other
course,
words,
the whole reason for my time being here is that this program will work if you're 5 or 95.
okay.
See, when you start changing the chemistry that you're putting in, this next cell that's made is how the next cell that your body made while you're sitting here, how's it going to be made? I mean, how do you get over fatigue? The next cell you make is healthier than the last one you came from. See, there's only one way, and I haven't got figured out how to get rid of wrinkles yet. You've done a good job. But the point is, how do you make the next cell healthier?
Okay, now, you've talked about fish oils. In other words, cod liver oil, because I say, you know, this is good to take. So in other words, cod liver oil should not be taken.
Leave the fish oil alone.
Leave the fish oil
Eat your
alone.
flax, eat your chia, and you'll be much better off.
So this is what's messed me up. I started doing stuff I didn't do, and it's killing me.
I thought in the one place that you had canola oil with the good oils.
You
That's
did.
better than olive
You
oil?
saw that. I didn't get to mark that one out on my handout.
Oh, okay.
Because canola oil is less inflammatory than some of the other saturated fats, but it is not totally anti-inflammatory. Please don't use that one.
Okay. Thank you.
No. But it's in gradation. It is better than, obviously, the other one.
What I'd like to know is, you said no dairy, avoid dairy.
Avoid dairy products.
What about yogurt,
What is-
probiotics?
Yogurt is just rotten milk.
Okay. All right. So, okay.
Hey, the best I can do for you is take your soy milk and rot that and make a little better yogurt. But see, whenever you take a protein and you ferment it, you increase the potential of inflammation. But if you want to cut the inflammation, soy yogurt is a better choice. And now you can get yogurts with any milk. I mean, it could be rice, it could be soy, etc. Yeah. By the way, the interesting correlation of all these ladies think they're getting healthy using yogurt, as in cow yogurt, their rate of ovarian cancer goes up 40%. So I'm not into yogurt being healthy. We got a lady with the microphone. She's trying to get around. By the way, she's doing it because I can't hear.
How about fermented food, like kimchi, sauerkraut, and all this?
Fermented foods in general are already inflamed. I mean, you guys, you're not going to like this one, okay? What do you think vinegar is? Do you know that the chemical in vinegar that you and I like or taste or whatever is called acetic acid? One of the major inflammatories to the gastric lining. Your mucus cells, the mucus membranes in your body don't like vinegar. You don't believe me? Just put some up your nose. No, don't do that. I'm getting a little bit facetious. I guess I'm getting tired. The point I'm getting at is that it is very damaging. But why do we drink it? And why do we take it? And why do we put it on our salads? Because some of us confuse stimulation of tissue with health. Never confuse that. If you're taking a supplement that makes you feel like you can jump over the building, I will guarantee you that that little ingredient that says cola nuts in it is actually caffeine, and they just didn't want to write it out because they knew that you're too smart for them and you wouldn't buy the caffeine. See, I'm not into stimulating nutrients, I'm into building nutrients. Big difference. If you don't take a stimulating nutrient, you feel terrible the next day. If you eat your broccoli, you build slowly, steady, and your energy improves. That's why caffeine would be considered a stimulatory chemical, not a nutrient chemical. Who has, yes ma'am?
I've been fighting cancer this past year, and I've had a lot of radiation. I've had a lot of scans with contrast. Would charcoal help rid me of anything like that?
Charcoal will help for the acute part of that. You take it as soon as you have exposure, and that will help.
Oh, okay.
Long-term is not going to help that much. It's still a good detoxifier.
Right.
Your omega-3 fats will pay you much higher dividends than anything else I can tell you right now.
Okay.
But for example, if a person is having a lot of radiation, whatever form that is, and it's in the, I mean, you're doing it like today, I would tell you to go home tonight and take your tablespoonful of charcoal, put it in your cup of water, stir it up, and take it. Doing it 2 weeks from now probably won't help you that much. So it's protection.
Is chemo the same thing? Would that help with that?
Chemo is one of your most powerful inflammatory things on the market. Well, wait a minute, folks, reason with me. What does chemo do? It kills cells. But reason it doesn't kill us, at least not too quickly, is because chemo works on the cell at a certain stage of division. So a cell that's dividing, I can kill that one because I'm knocking out the ability for it to divide. So the faster a tissue is dividing, I'm going to get more of the bad guys than I'm getting the good guys. Yes. The reason I don't like chemo is because I'm a nutritionist. And you've knocked out my whole ability to help you because I totally depend on a healthy digestive tract to help you absorb your nutrients to supply them to your body. And chemo attacks rapid growing tissue. Yeah. The cancer, of course, bone marrow is a very rapid growing tissue. That's why they draw your blood and see whether you can handle the next treatment. True. And your guts feel like they got torn out because the wall of your intestinal tract renews about every 5 days. If you can believe that, you get a whole new intestinal lining about every 5 days. So any tissue that grows that rapid will have the most effect, or chemo will have the most effect on that.
All right. I just noticed that the last scans that I've had, when they do the isotope thing,
yes,
is I'll break out. It's like I have a rash or something almost, well, within 24 hours,
well,
it seems like.
Your liver has done the best it can to detoxify. You can help that immediately by taking your charcoal. And you won't mess up the value of the test because they found out, but it will help the radioactive end of it.
Okay.
It's like I tell people, I treat people where they take chemo, where they take radiation, where they take nothing, where, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not trying to be their conscience. But when a person takes chemo, then they limit their body's ability to do things. When a person takes radiation treatments, they limit their body from doing that. And so I work with whatever level we can. But it still comes back to how can I feed the healthy cells and how can I starve the cancer ones. So some of the oldest treatments for cancer are, guess what? Starvation. And you read these books that seem totally wild, the grape cure. Well, how many grapes can you eat in a day? And if I could write a book, The Carrot Cure, and probably come up with the same response. When you drop the calories, when you increase the nutrients, it's one of the best things you can do for the body. So for your recovery, anti-inflammatory, this lecture was for you today. Yes, ma'am.
I have two questions. One is for her. I'm her daughter.
Okay.
So how long after, because you said the charcoal is for like immediate use, how long after she has the contrast or whatever should she do it?
3 days I would use it for.
Okay. That was.
Remember, when you radiate a person, it's not like it stays in the radiation form and you get next to your mom and you get the problem. Mm-hmm. Now, when they put seeds and deal with men's prostates, they say, please don't hold your grandson for a while because they'd like him to be able to have a family. Okay, so that is emitting something along. But when they do something like they did to your mom, the effect of the radiation will last much longer, but the actual radiation that charcoal can help won't. In other words, when you radiate a fat in the tissue, you really cause it to go in inflammation mode. That charcoal won't change that. Anyway, maybe that helped. Go ahead.
And the second question I had was you had said flaxseed and chia seeds for omega-3s.
Yes.
How much in a day?
General rule, the flax seed, I want you taking 2 tablespoons a day. If you can't handle that and you go with the flaxseed oil, then it's basically half that. But you're not getting the same benefits from the oil that you're going to get from the whole seed. So, flaxseed on a donut? Let me see. Let me start my lecture all over again. Ground flaxseed, yes. You'll absorb it much, but get more out of it. Yes, thank you.
And chia seeds, same thing?
Excuse me?
The chia seeds, about the same?
Chia seed, if you soak chia seed, you can get away without grinding it. If you're using chia seed dry, you'll be better to grind.
Okay, so like taking the dry chia seed.
My wife is a good experimenter. Guess what she made? Some things you have to almost close your eyes. She took her chia seed, she soaked it overnight, she blended up a banana, put some oatmeal with it, and she expected me to eat it. And guess what? She goes, it's good. You have to try it. I tried it. It's true. It's a creative way to get your chia seed. Gentleman in the back. She's coming your way, sir.
How long does it normally take to reestablish your immune system once you've gone through a series of chemo treatments?
You've got a very excellent question. I do a lot of praying because I see young people that come in that have had their immune system annihilated, and I don't have a good answer for you because I don't know. We usually consider that after a year, you are hopefully back to norm and less damage than that. But that is a valid, but it's a very hard question. I don't have a good way to answer that. At the same time, I think it's not wise to say, well, if it takes 2 years, I'm not going to even start. Oh, by all means. Yes. Every time you lose 1 pound of fat, you've decreased 1 pound worth of inflammation in the body.
Oh, that's good.
It's the easiest way to do it. See, weight control is not hard. It's just you have to choose what you want to eat.
Amen to that.
If you eat nothing but vegetables, you'll get all the protein you need, you get all the nutrients you need, and you can't over-calorie. People say, get down on and tell them what to do. They go, well, how much can I eat? Much as you want to. I mean, how many bushels can you get down a day? you know, and don't get out the cheese sauce and mess up my program. I'm sorry, let me go, I got to go with the microphone. It helps me too.
All I wanted to know was, what is the best oil to use for cooking?
Why do you ask me a question like that?
I don't know.
What is the best oil to use for cooking?
Or is there
the answer
one?
is, there is no good oil to use for cooking. Now, if you want to know what the best of the worst is, it still comes back to good old olive oil. But when you heat it, you've got a problem. No, it's all how refined it is. And like I was discussing olive, a lot of times it's cold pressed, but when they heat it up to make it nice and golden, you lose your benefit. Oils do not do well above about 115 degrees. You change the chemistry, the actual molecular structure. Am I fading in and out? Yes. Am I out of battery, sir?
Dr. Collins,
yes.
I would like to tell this group here what a wonderful job you have done for my husband. He's 90 years old. Our daughter, we was down to the wire. It was medicine, stents, or bypasses, and they said if you do stents or bypasses, you'd never make it off the table. And Lisa had been to you, and she told us about you. So we came to your office, and I mean, he was at the point where we didn't think he was really, I mean, he was getting bad. I don't think he even realized how bad he was. He's 90 years old. He started coming to you last fall. He's walking. He's lost weight. They have taken him all 3 doctors' medicines, and he does your vitamins, and he eats vegetables, and he is doing fantastic. And we feel like between you and God, we have our JK back.
Praise the Lord.
Okay. This should be maybe the last question.
We're good.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, good. Do it. I don't know if you remember me.
I knew you when I saw you, and you're Aubrey, right?
I'm Aubrey. That's correct. I'll try not to make eye contact with you because I get emotional, but I was diagnosed with severe hypertension when I was 20. I have no family history. I've always been this size, this good looking, and no.
She is, no brag.
No, but my parents have always given us a healthy life, and I came to Dr. Collins after 6 years of multi-million-dollar workup, every test you can imagine. I was maxed out on 4 blood pressure pills, and that's after trying every other pill. And my husband and I even tried alternative therapy for a year. We did $35,000 worth of it, and I learned a lot. I tried everything. And
but
nothing
I only
worked.
charged her 50, so it wasn't that
Yeah,
steep.
it wasn't that bad. But anyway, so I heard about Dr. Collins, and we were at I was done. So I called him up, and I said, hey, I'm 26 years old. I have a medical file this thick. Are you willing to see me? And he's like, yeah, I'll get you off your medicine. I'm like, sure you will, and cash only, right? And but within 6 weeks, I was off all my medicines, and that was 7 years ago.
Praise the Lord.
Yeah, I have a baby now.
Congratulations.
They said we would never have a baby.
God is good. Yes, ma'am. I have some cards when we're done. Thank you.
What do you think about kombucha? It's the latest.
Once again, you're always taking a much higher risk with foods that have been fermented and increasing inflammation. You're always best eating your cabbage, not... Folks, why are we hung up on rotten food? I mean, the stuff, if it tastes bad, well, no, I take it back. Some people, thank you. Some people actually like it. Good to see you, Aubrey. My point is this, that the fermentation process changes the protein to make it much more inflammatory. That's the problem. It's not a matter of a little more acetic acid or one of the acids the bacteria puts off in flavor. If you think you need more punch in your food, why don't you do something that dilates your blood vessels like cayenne? Or whatever, or jalapeno or habanero. I mean, you can go on up the heat scale or whatever. But I am a believer in that your food can be healthy and taste good at the same time. If you're eating dead oatmeal and you got to eat every morning, then that's enough to make you depressed. There is foods that are good, that can be healthy, that look good. The fresher you get your food, the less refined you get your food, usually the better off. What I have found during these winter months is that the cherry tomatoes actually taste like real tomatoes. The big ones taste like cardboard. So somehow the cherry tomatoes either survive better or whatever they do better, so and you do the best you can through the winter months. I mean, yeah, you can can tomatoes, but that's not the same as something fresh. You know? Maybe I need to go back and show my pictures of my salads anyway.
I just had one more thing to say. That's not a question. I just wanted to say that 2 years ago, I had such extreme fatigue that I couldn't hardly get out of bed.
It's going to be embarrassing yet.
I know it. And I was in bed for probably 22 hours out of 24 a day, just getting up, barely functioning and going back. Sleeping, actually. And I put up with that. I was one of those people that would sit down at the table and could not eat. I had completely lost my appetite. I lost 25 pounds, which wasn't bad. But as time went on and I was trying to deal with this and not knowing what to do, I came out of the bedroom one day and I stood there in my living room and I said, I'm dying. I'm actually dying and I don't know what to do. And I heard about Dr. Collins. And I went to Dr. Collins. And he put me on 10 supplements. And within 1 week, I was out of bed. I was eating. That was 2 years ago, and I'm doing great. And I thank you. Thank you, Dr. Collins.
Folks, you're going to embarrass me yet. Am I getting red yet? Well, you've been good. It is after 5 o'clock. Thank you for coming. The schedule, if you don't already know it, I think we're the 4th of next month. Is that correct? And then I think we take a break, and I think they have me back in July and August, Sunday afternoons like this. We'll try to keep it to 2.5, 3 hours. I invite your questions. Invite your friends. We'll be covering the 3 biggies. We're going to be covering heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. And if you have none of those, you still need to come because we spend most of our time on prevention, as you well know. So you don't have to be a diabetic to get something out of a diabetic lecture. How's that? Blessings. Hope you have a good evening. Pastor, you want to say something? We're good.